Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nature Source Care. My name is Dr. Funda Goldman. I'm a naturopathic physician, and today I was going to talk about the medicinal benefits of the spice oregano, or Origanum vulgare, as it's known as by its Latin name. So, this video is part of my kitchen pharmacy series where I discuss various foods in the kitchen that actually have medicinal properties, and you just may not be aware of them. So, hopefully, this will help you out. So, let's take a look here. A few notes before we get into it. The information presented here is for educational purposes only, should not be considered medical advice. For any symptoms that persist or worsen, please consult with a qualified medical professional. It's always best to determine the root cause of any disease and to develop a comprehensive treatment plan, of which something like oregano can be a part. Also, while botanical medicine, nutritional remedies can be very effective, they may not be appropriate for everyone or as a single therapy. Also, keep in mind the two most common side effects of any plant-based medicine are digestive upset and skin itching, which actually oregano, if you do too much, especially for too long, can develop into those kind of symptoms. So let's see what we got here. If you're into this kind of video where I talk about, again, different foods in the grocery store and in your kitchen, again, my perspective on this is when I go into my kitchen, to me, it's a natural pharmacy. So I know how to use these things, and that's why I try to teach people about them so that they can get that information as well and hopefully help themselves where they can. This kind of video, I'm pretty good at slotting my videos into different playlists. So I have a botanical medicine, nutrition, and kitchen pharmacy playlist. So this video is going to be slotted into those, and similar videos are as well. The information I present in this video is actually based on my book. It's called Drink to Your Health Medicinal Teas, Juices, and Milks from Around the World. If you're ever interested in picking up a copy, you can get a copy on Amazon. You can see the link here. But the reason why I spent time writing this book is because as a naturopathic physician, I actually function from different paradigms of medicine simultaneously. So I work from a Western medicine, kind of modern Western paradigm, as well as homeopathy, which is a whole energetic paradigm, Ayurveda, which is traditional Indian medicine, and also naturopathic medicine, which is more of a traditional medicine type of paradigm. So it's very hard to actually find books that integrate these sorts of paradigms. So I wrote one. That's what I did. Anyway, if you're interested in natural medicine generally, beyond just what the food in your kitchen does for you and your body, again, my different playlists are kind of like different courses. So, like, I have an Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine playlist, aromatherapy, which is Ayurvedic acupressure, yoga meditation, homeopathy, black flower remedies, which are under the umbrella of homeopathy, but more specific, nutrition, botanical medicine, hydrotherapy, or the therapeutic use of water, body care, and cleansing. So, cleansing on physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. So, trying to, it's pretty comprehensive, I think, in terms of natural therapies that people can learn about on the channel. So, you might check some of that out. Okay, so oregano, let's talk about that. So, the parts used of the plants, and this is a pretty nice image, actually. I didn't know that it had little pink flowers like that, but it's pretty cute. But the leaves, mostly the leaves are used, I think, in typical preparations like dried leaf. That's probably how most people, use it. They get a little bottle from the grocery store. But also the flowers as well can be used. You can make a tea from oregano, and if you do, you want to use the infusion method, which is a lighter preparation. I have a whole video titled Different Methods for Making Medicinal Teas if you want to learn about the different methods, but infusion's pretty light. It's not like an active boil for a long amount of time. There are also, I did want to mention, a lot of people like in the kind of natural medicine world or people who frequent, health food stores and stuff like this, that you'll often find oil of oregano preparations. Okay. I just wanted to mention that because I've seen people really overuse oil of oregano. It's very, very strong. It's very effective for what it's used for, but a lot of people overuse it or misuse it. So I did want to mention that, even though my talk is mostly about, tea. But so if you ever do pick up the oil, you never want to, take it directly into your mouth because it's very strong. It'll actually burn your tongue in your mouth. And again, you only want to use a small amount for a short period of time. So I usually tell people like 3 drops 3 times a day for 10 days, and that's it for especially the oils because they're just so strong. It can really do a lot of damage, in terms of causing inflammation. It can be very effective for certain things, but not all things. So just keep that in mind. And the reason why I talk about these things is this sort of information. Like the more I've been doing naturopathic medicine for almost 20 years now, and the intricate details of how to use these herbs and when and all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff you don't really find on the internet. I get plenty of people who come in who self-prescribe off the internet, and they do a pretty good job. At least they get into the ballpark of what they need. But sometimes they do, the wrong things completely, or things that are just too harsh, or things that are helpful for one condition, but then they exacerbate another condition. So, again, just remember that oil of oregano is very strong, and you should only use a few drops a day for about 10 days max. Okay. So, from an Ayurvedic perspective, Ayurveda is traditional Indian medicine, which is a very energetic type of paradigm of medicine. So, Ayurveda talks about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So, loosely translated, Vata is wind, Pitta is fire, and Kapha is earth. So, Vata as wind is a cold, dry energy, and Pitta as fire is a hot, intense energy, and Kapha as earth is a cold, wet energy. So in Ayurveda, what you want to do is if you have a condition that's cold and wet, so very kapha, you might use a herb like oregano because it's hot and dry. So the hot and dry qualities of oregano will balance the cold, wet symptoms of the kapha. Okay. So kapha, again, earthy symptoms. So usually when we're talking about something like oregano, like a lot of congestion, like maybe nasal congestion or lung congestion, that sort of thing, because that cold, wet mucus is very kapha, and so the oregano being hot and dry will balance that out. Okay, so specifically, so oregano, because it's mostly a hot herb, would be best for vata condition, so cold and dry. It'll warm up vata. Although you have to be careful of doing too much because it is a dry herb as well. And even if it wasn't a dry herb, because it's fairly hot, anything that's very heating isn't going to dry things out. And Vata is the most sensitive of the 3 types of, either conditions, constitution types, or symptoms. Because Vata, Pitta, Kapha are used to describe any of those symptoms, conditions, or constitution type. So if somebody constitutionally is very cold and dry or Vata, windy, they can do a little bit of oregano, but not too much, because they'll dry out because it's so hot. They'll improve with a bit of heat, from a warm herb like this. Again, I would say this is more of a hot herb than a warm herb. It's kind of on that line. Like it's not as hot as like habanero pepper or cayenne pepper or something like that, but it's, for an everyday table herb, it's fairly hot. Okay. Um, a pitta, again, a fire hot. This is, if there's any kind of inflammation or something like that, generally oregano is not the herb you want to use. Okay. Um, Generally speaking. And then kapha, though, is probably the most helped by oregano because oregano is a hot, dry herb. But let's talk about, and I didn't mention, so Ayurveda specifically, if you're into Ayurveda and the energetics, kind of line up here, it's an astringent herb and pungent herb. So again, it's going to be warming, but also drying. Astringent is going to bring a drying quality to it. It's heating in nature, and then pungent as well means that it's going to activate like fluid movement and stuff like that in the body. Okay. So if we look at the different systems of the body, how does oregano impact those systems? Well, the nervous system, it can potentially help with pain and achiness. Because of the warmth that it brings, it also increases circulation. So especially if it's like a dull, achy pain. A dull, achy pain would be more of a kapha, earthy type of pain versus a pain that comes and goes. A pain that comes and goes is going to be a vata, windy type of pain. The wind moves, right? It blows high, blows low. It's very erratic. So especially for a dull, achy type of pain, oregano might help. Like if there's like maybe a little bit of congestion or like edema, swelling, that sort of thing. Some people might find like if you, I'm not talking about, the things I talk about in my book are all internal remedies, but some people like if you find like a muscle rub type stuff, ointments and stuff in the health food store, sometimes they'll have cayenne or something like oregano because they're warming. And so even if you apply it topically through a balm or something like that, should increase circulation. And again, get that congestion moving instead of just sort of stuck in one spot. Because again, off our Earth is cold and wet, so it's heavy, like the Earth. So that's the nervous system. So the respiratory system, colds, flu, specifically wet coughs, not a dry cough, because again, this is probably too hot and dry for, dry cough. But, congestion of the nose, the sinuses, the lungs, it's also an expectorant, so it can actually help to, again, move, stuck phlegm, mucus, that sort of thing. As far as the cardiovascular system, it's a warm herb, so it's going to improve circulation. And it's also a diaphoretic. So I do have listed at the bottom of the slide. Generally speaking, it can be good for some fevers. I wouldn't say a high fever, but like a mild fever, and only in small doses. Because what those small doses are going to do is they're going to increase the circulation. The circulation is going to move from the center of the body up towards the skin. And when that blood starts moving towards the skin, it's going to have a chance to cool off, exchange some of that heat into the air. So for, again, mild fevers, small doses may be helpful, in terms of, again, moving that, getting over the hump of clearing, what's causing the fever potentially, or at least the symptoms of the fever. So in terms of the immune system, and again, this is probably why, for those people who frequent health food stores, they know oregano the most, is it's a natural antibiotic, specifically for bacterial infections, fungal infections, and parasitic infections. It won't help with viral infections. So I know, like during COVID, during the pandemic, because people sometimes get very vague about what different herbs are used for. Like they just know immune system, so they just sort of use certain products, natural products for anything that's, sort of under that umbrella of immune problem, like COVID, which is a viral infection. But oregano, especially COVID, was a hot, dry type of virus. That's why it affected mostly like older people, because older people are more vata. They're more dry than like young kids who are more kapha. The kids are more earthy, right? They're usually a little chubbier and they're mucusy. they, they congested noses and ears and stuff. So they're more kapha. And then we're all more kapha until about 20 years of age. And then from age 20 to 55, we become more pitta and we become more fiery. And we use that fire to like build our lives and careers and families and stuff like that. And then from 55 on, we're all becoming more vata or windy. So we're all drying up, right? Hair, skin, nails, uterus, bones, all the above, right? So we're all on that train, moving that direction as we age. So COVID again affected older people because they were already hot and dry by the time of life, phase of life they were in. So that's part of why, unfortunately, COVID really played havoc with that part of the population. But anyway, getting back to this herb here. Um, yeah, so oregano, especially the oil of oregano, is very popular. And again, I think very much overused and inappropriately used for any kind of immune system. So just be aware that it's more specific for bacteria, fungi, and parasites. So it actually do a lot, but viruses, I wouldn't even look at this. It does help with digestion. Again, if you use it in small doses, like if you use it as like a tea, because teas generally, especially an infusion type of tea, is not very strong. And herbs in general, especially a warm herb like this, helps digestion. But again, you wouldn't want to use this like oil, for that kind of thing. I think the oil is like too hot, for that kind of thing. So, a little bit of tea, infusion tea, or a little sprinkle, of dried oregano herb, or if you have a fresh, that you could use that as well on your food, but that's about it. And again, I wouldn't overdo it. I wouldn't necessarily use oregano every day or with every meal, because then if you use it that much, you will, develop, uh, acidic conditions of the digestions, probably irritation as well. If you really overdo it, I mean, it could really create some um, inflammation, like even in terms of ulcers and stuff like that. If you use too much, hot, spicy food, which or oregano. Most people, especially if people are used to hot, spicy food, like some of my patients, they carry around a hot sauce bottle with them in their purse. And those are usually my pitta patients. They're already fiery and they like to eat fiery food, which doesn't help balance them out. But they're so used to hot food that oregano doesn't feel hot to them anymore. But if you're somebody who never eats hot food, oregano is pretty spicy. So, it's, yeah, it is considered a heating herb. Um, so, yeah, the genitourinary tract, so it is a diuretic, so it will help get rid of extra water on the body. Also, for women, it promotes menses, so it's a menagogue herb. Nutritionally, it got quite a bit of bioflavonoids, so that can help to build up mucous membranes and vessel walls, and blood vessel walls, as long as you don't overdo it. Because again, if you take too much of this hot herb, it can start to ulcerate those really sensitive, fragile, mucous membranes in the body. There's I, this is a story that came to mind that I thought I should mention during this talk. So I did have a young patient who came in with his mom. I think he was a first grader, kindergarten, first grade, pretty young guy, 7 years old. But he came in, his mother brought him in because he had had rectal bleeding for a year. And he'd been to, different specialists or whatever, and it really hadn't helped. And so one of the things I do in my practice is I tell everybody who comes in, as a new patient, to bring in all the supplements and medications that they're taking so I can take a look at what they're taking in. And especially like or not pharmaceutical, but nutraceutical bottles, herbal preparations and stuff. They can often have a bunch of different things in there that people aren't aware of. And, they just look at the marketing on the front of the package. Like, so this kid, his dad went to the health food store and picked up a sinus formula for kids because he was having a lot of, nasal congestion. So the kid had been on this preparation for a while. And so as we were going through his supplements, I was looking at that sinus preparation had a bunch of hot herbs. That's the other thing that's different. Like, that's why I like to use Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, because it's a very energetic paradigm of medicine, um, which Western medicine doesn't really, acknowledge, or it's not really part of Western medicine. So again, being a hot, dry herb, it was going to help his congestion, nasal congestion, which it did. But then the problem is that it basically ulcerated his colon. So when I saw that preparation of the sinuses, and again, it was stuff that we typically eat. It wasn't anything weird or really strange. It was like, but it was all hot, dry herbs for the sinuses. So it was like horseradish and I think clove and cinnamon and what else? I don't think it was cayenne, but it might have had oregano in it. But anyway, most of the herbs in there, again, because I worked from that paradigm of Ayurveda, I was like, I think this preparation is just way too hot for him. So why don't we stop this? And that was like the first 5 minutes of our meeting. So anyway, we went through the rest. I did the whole history and we changed his diet a little bit or whatever. But yeah, a week later, his mom called me and said the bleeding had stopped. And it was mostly because we had stopped that preparation. And again, his dad was well-meaning, thought, oh, it's a natural product. I'll just go to a health food store, get some, help my kid's sinuses. And like, again, they didn't realize that there was a connection with the bleeding. And I mean, it was pretty substantial for this kid because, he's bleeding for a year. I don't think he became anemic, but, he even went through and had a colonoscopy done, to see why there was bleeding. I mean, that's pretty big deal for a little kid. And then also it was starting to affect his self-esteem because, he's going to school and he couldn't like maintain his, bowels because his bowels were irritated from his product. So and he was starting to become more self-conscious, in first grade. So he was, going to school and worry that he might, mess his pants or not make it to the bathroom. And it became this whole huge thing. And so it's like, luckily we were able to figure that out pretty quickly that he was taking herbs that are way too hot and dry for him. So I gave him stuff for his sinuses, but that aren't like hot and dry like that. And then he could, help the congestion as well as, get his colon back. So yeah, so I just, just respect the herbs is, is my, my suggestion there. People don't always know. And again, it's like you find this in the grocery store and the health food store. But if you use it, anything, too much of anything, like too much water, too much salt, too much this herb or that herb or whatever, can create pretty serious imbalances in people, especially depending on what their condition is. So, okay, so other cautions here. Pregnancy, I definitely would not use oil of oregano. That's way too hot and dry. You don't want to irritate the, sensitive mucous membranes surrounding the child, the fetus. Any kind of ulcerative digestive issue. If you already know you have an ulcerative, like ulcerative colitis or something like that, I definitely wouldn't take oil of oregano and use the other forms of oregano, like infusion or like even like little sprinkle here and there. Use it very judiciously, if at all. Also, with the oil, you never want to use that undiluted. So usually I tell people, to put the two or three drops in soup and take it that way, because it'll burn your tongue if you take it straight. And then again, from the Ayurvedic perspective, any condition that's too high pitta vata, so too much of hot and dry of conditions, which would be things like eczema. So if you have eczema, so hot, dry, itchy skin, you definitely don't want to do oil or oil of oregano and hot, dry herbs like oregano. You don't want to do much of, like a little sprinkle here and there, but you don't want to do it long and high doses. The other thing about not doing like the oil, the reason why I say you don't do it longer than 10 days, because I see people who come in and they take it like every day for months on end, is it is an antibiotic. It's a natural antibiotic, but any antibiotic, if you take it long enough, you'll develop resistant, pathogen or, bugs or pathogens. So besides that, it's gonna, potentially inflame and dry out your tissues. So eczema, you don't want to take this sort of herb much of, and other hot, dry conditions like asthma. So that's like the opposite of a wet cough, because asthma is hot. There's inflammation, but it's also dry. So, yeah, so there's oregano, very helpful, but again, you want to use it with caution and respect, so you don't overdo it and cause other problems. But a very effective herb in many situations. All right, so as always, thanks so much for stopping by and listening to one of my talks. Again, this talk was based on my book, Drink to Your Health, Medicinal Teas, Juices, and Milks from Around the World. Copies are available on Amazon if you want to pick up one. I do have another YouTube channel on Vedic astrology, so the astrology of ancient India. The name of that channel is Light Vedic Astrology, if that's of interest to you. And I do have an online art gallery gift shop, and the link is provided here. So, as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate your own health and well-being. All right, so take good care. Namaste.